Alrighty, folks. This was supposed to be a 2-hour session with the three amigos. Unfortunately, Dion had a last-minute family emergency that he had to take care of this morning. He's actually on the road to go deal with that now. And Matt, the lumberjack landlord, had a honey-do list item that he inadvertently forgot about. Both of them were texting with me yesterday, ensuring me that they will both be available next Sunday. So we're going to do the three amigos next Sunday. We'll also do 2 hours. I won't commit anything else to 9 o'clock. So I'm disappointed. I'm sure you're disappointed. But my brothers, especially Dion, has to go deal with something that nobody really wants to deal with. But he's doing that this morning. So I'm sure we will all send him love and support. And Matt, you got to take care of the wife. You got to know about the weekend activities. So we will just do it again next week. But that said, I did allocate 2 hours this morning. I don't normally do that. So I am yours for the next 2 hours. If there are questions, I'm happy to talk about anything and everything. I'm, again, like you, disappointed I can't talk to my brothers this morning. It's always fun when we get together. But we'll just have to look forward to doing it next week. So with that said, same rules apply. If you want to ask me a question, you can raise your hand. You can put it in the comments or chat. Any topic is open: real estate, economy, YouTube, health, relationships, raising daughters, whatever you want to talk about. I'm an open book and would love to get started. So let me go through the comments, see if there's anything already there. Thanks, Mark, for putting on a clean shirt. I appreciate it. That's very nice of you. It is 5 a.m. after all. Man, I'm a morning person, but 5 a.m., that's early. Morning misfits. Love that. Love that. We are a family. Common sense. I close on a house hack in Tampa on Thursday. Congratulations. 553, three roommates. I'll pay $100 a month. Dude, you're cheating. You're cheating. That's the way to do it. Take your largest expense, X taxes, and slash it to $100. Get that income snowball, discretionary income. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Send me a note offline and I'll send you a black card or a gold card. I don't know if it's your first or next, but I will make sure oh, it's your third, so it'll be a black card. So congratulations for doing that. Let's keep going. Morning, Andy. Life gets in the way. It certainly does. They are both very apologetic. As you might suspect, they're both very good dudes. Yep. Okay. All right. So anybody have questions that we want to riff on this morning? Anything at all? Anybody want to raise their hand? Put comments in. Hey, Frank, I see your hands up.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Good morning, everyone. I was, since you mentioned YouTube, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but you and Mark on your calls going through comments were talking about school and how some people had thought it might be better to keep school recordings inside school. And when Mark first brought that up, I guess my first reaction, which probably wasn't the best reaction, was that it seems to me like people can't really get help they need if they don't share like their whole situation or their whole story. And I guess maybe that might be I guess not too smart on my part, because I've always just, blurted it out there, what I'm going through, and good or bad, whatever. But then after I thought about it, I realized that because we do have a couple people that come on our Wednesday call that can't really be on camera or recorded because of their jobs and things like that. So I understood. Sure. But the other side of that is, and not just for school, but for our YouTube channels in general, it seems like we want to put it out there as far as we can, because if the only people seeing our stuff are the ones in the community, it's harder to grow the channel, right? or gross school. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But so I had to step back and think about it for a while before I guess, came to my senses and realized that, not everybody can share
Mhm.
details outside of this community of school.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I think about this all the time, and appreciate Mark, collecting feedback and giving it to me. So it means I can think about it more. Right. My initial reaction was, 67 pennies a day is not a hard hurdle rate for me to show value. Right. Given, at least an hour of my time a week, today 2 hours, bringing you other millionaires where you can interact and ask questions, the 7 accountability groups, the 400 people in the forums. It's not easy for me to feel like I'm providing more value. That said, there are absolutely things that we should talk about in our community that we won't share outside. There have been several live sessions where somebody in our community shared specific addresses, specific details, and either A, I don't share those videos because, that's just, I don't want anything going out there about my stuff. Why would I send someone else? Or B, I have my team blurred out or I cut that stuff out. So I'm hypersensitive. Like if somebody was in one of these live sessions and said, Michael, I don't want this public, I would mark the time slot, cut it out, or I wouldn't publish it. So, I'm dude, I am so open to feedback that if, somebody wanted to share something and, all they have to say is Zuber, I don't want this going out, I wouldn't share it. I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, this, my goal from video number 1 in 2018 was to create something that outlived me by 50 years. And the stuff that we are doing in school, the questions we are answering that are real, are valuable. And I think they can help other people. So, you know, I I apologize to the people that would prefer to keep it private, keep it small. But my goal is to try to create a movement that helps generations, grows the middle class, makes some of you all wealthy. So I'm playing a bigger game, but I am very sensitive to private conversations. And so if you tell me or if I feel the conversations that way, I cut it out. So it is something I think about a lot more often the last couple of weeks because Mark brought it up. So I sometimes have to step back and think about it. So yeah, of
Yeah, thank you.
course. All right. Go ahead and raise your hand, folks. Don't be shy. Let's talk about what's going on in the economy, what's going on in your life. James, I saw you had your son come in. Was he helping you with technology issues or what's going on? Oh, looking for the mute button. There he is.
Yeah, I couldn't hear anything you guys were saying, so I had to grab my 15-year-old to get the volume on.
There you go. I appreciate that. The kids have all the answers.
Yes, they do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Common sense. Yeah. Good. Great comment. Life happens to all of us. Sometimes we need to deal with that in short order, and Dion is doing that this morning. And it'll be up to him if he wants to share what's going on or not. I'm not doing that. That's for sure. That's his choice. Which, knowing him, he probably will, but that will be up to him to share when the time is right. Um, I don't see any other questions in the comments just yet. So again, folks, we're here. Ask me the questions. You all have a buy box. You're all doing the work. We're all dealing with. Oh, now we got a question. Common sense.
Yeah, good morning, Corby, first name.
Thank you.
I've got 2 YouTube channels, and I really haven't started at all on them because I'm one of those guys with a sensitive job. Not necessarily the job, but it puts me in places where people don't like Americans. And if I wind up in their hands, the more they can find out about me is bad.
Yeah.
Uh, so I basically just put YouTube on hold until I'm not in that job anymore, which could be 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
I still want to be able to give back and reach out to those around me, especially, any of the young people in like Cody's age group that are interested in getting started, because what a resource that is to have the time. Can you think of any way to do that outside of YouTube?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, you could do a faceless channel, and just go off the name Common Sense REI if you wanted, or like name. You could do podcasting, which is no video, right? Spotify. I actually have 10 million listens on Spotify, which is pretty impressive. I have 28 million views on YouTube, so it's about a third. So I would, if I had to think about it just off the top of my head, I would go podcast, no video. That would work for you, I would guess. Also, you could create an accountability group inside school specifically for, I don't know, sub 30-year-olds, and then we focus on growing that. So you really do get the control of the community, and then again, you don't have to record the sessions if you don't want. So you could either go non-video, which is podcasting, or faceless channel on YouTube, or B, use what we're doing at One Rental at a Time and grow a sub community in that. And I could help you push that, because an eighth accountability group focused on 20 to 30-year-olds would be an amazing thing to do. There's 7 groups now, which is amazing. So you could be the 8th, for example. So there's lots of things you could do. Also, obviously, the lumberjack told his story with Sean Cannell back at our first Vegas event. The reason he's called the lumberjack landlord is he didn't want anybody in his profession to know what he did. It's not quite life-threatening, as in your example, but he leaned into that moniker as a way to stay hidden. But there's obviously risks in that.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think there's a couple things.
one of the reasons I didn't choose my name for my channel name.
Yeah, makes
Brad,
total
thank
sense.
you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, Spotify is I've actually noticed a lot more. I guess they call them listens. You'd call them views on YouTube the last couple of months, and they actually have a creator fund. They're starting to pay creators, and I've been posting to Spotify for 5 years, nothing, and then the last 6 months they started sending me checks. So it's kind of wild. So know that Spotify pays as well. All right, Steven, thank you for your hands up. What do you got, buddy?
Good morning, Michael. Good morning,
Yes.
everyone in the Bull Rock community. I'm a first-time investor from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and
Hi,
prices,
welcome.
yeah, so prices here have well appreciated over anything that makes sense. Like we're talking duplexes here are about $1 million plus, right? So I'm a first-time investor, and I'm looking at out of state, Pittsburgh to be specific. I was just wondering. Say I find a good contractor, I find a good, someone that can rehab the place. Would you recommend me doing my first deal as a rehab, or should I look for something more turnkey, light, minimal, kind of, yeah, like light, minimal paint, flooring, appliances? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give you my answer. I'm actually going to give you 2 answers. Let me give you the first answer first. If you're a part of the ORAC community, and you have it posted that in the forums that you're a Pittsburgh investor or thinking about Pittsburgh, you need to do that immediately, because there's a lot of people in this community that are already investors there. And I believe anytime you go out of state, or in your case, out of country,
Mm-hmm.
I believe priority number 1 is to find other investors that are already successful. I know Bigger Pockets talks about the core 4. I don't buy that. I think number 1 is to find other investors that are already successful, already doing deals, already have relationships, already have history, so they could shortcut and help you avoid risks and help you qualify people. So that would be step number 1. I give you that answer for any state or city, but especially Pittsburgh, right? The gentleman above you in this view, financial firefighter. I don't know if Mikey's here. There's plenty of investors in Pittsburgh that if you don't know already, you need to know these guys, because they're amazing. But second, let's talk about the other question. As a first-time investor, I can only tell you what I did, because I think it was the right thing to do. For your first deal, it is my belief you need to do everything you can to de-risk the situation. And what does that mean? that means you need to get your first property with the least number of variables that can go wrong. And that means probably closer to turnkey than not. Because if you get a property that needs a bunch of work, you just don't know what's real, what's not, who the I mean, your risk profile goes up if you're buying a wholesale deal as your first deal that needs a heavy lift. Not only do you have city risk, location risk, street risk, quality risk, all of these things, but there's, that now you have bid and jobs. It's just too much. So I believe the first deal needs to be the least risky, needs to give you the best chance of success. So in my world, that's close to turnkey as possible the first time. That's what I did with Norris Drive. That's what a lot of investors do. I actually think before you go on to a heavy fixer, you probably got to do 2 or 3 deals. So probably do turnkey, then do a light fixer, paint, carpet. Then it's like heavy remodel, bath, kitchens, roof, appliances, things of that nature. That's my general feeling. But you are lucky that we have a bunch of Pittsburgh investors, so they may help you, take on a little bit of a project because they got relationships with teams and people. But yeah, don't risk that first deal, man. You got to make sure that first deal is close to good, because if you bust out the first one, yeah, you may not be back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was gonna say that this group is great. That's how I kind of came along Pittsburgh, was like, just seeing, I came across actually Lindsay's interview with Mark about Pittsburgh. Shout out to Mark. I've been bugging him lately, asking him
Awesome.
questions at like 2 a.m. in the morning and whatnot. But no, thanks. Thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody in the group that's been kind of helping me out with the research down in Pittsburgh. It's been great. Yeah. But
Awesome.
thanks again, Michael. I'll take that in consideration.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, this community is pretty special. It is so fun to watch it grow. Yeah. All right, no other hands up. Let's see what's going on in the comments. Yep, everybody having a good weekend. Family issues. Yep. Oh, what is stablecoin and how is it an opportunity? That came from iPhone. I'm not sure who that is. I am obviously not a crypto expert, but I can give you my 30,000 foot view of stablecoins. So what I think is going on with stablecoins is actually pretty interesting, because if you step back and you look at how money moves in our economy, there are a lot of people who take slices. Like if you have to send money to family in Europe or South America or Asia or whatever, there's transaction fees on both sides. So in theory, if you send $100, the person on the other end gets 92. And a lot, $8 is gobbled up by intermediaries. And, on top of that, there are a lot of companies. I mean, this stable coins, I bet, dominate company balance sheets. Why? I mean, think about a company like JP Morgan or, anybody who's a multinational company. They have currency risks all over their balance sheet, right? They're collecting in yen, in Australian dollar, and euros, and all of these other currencies. And same thing when they go to convert those to the balance sheet of the US dollars, there's currency risks and all of that. So one of the things that stablecoin is going to allow people to do is move that faster and with less haircut. So it makes a lot of sense to me that stablecoins will become a vehicle for multinationals to really address currency risks throughout their balance sheet, throughout their economy. There's obviously lots of other plays there being pushed in the crypto market, which I am no expert in. But I do see a play. I actually see a pretty significant play. I think that you'll probably see 1 or 2 points come off transactions, which just means dollars fall to the bottom line. It's more profitable. So I think stablecoins are here to stay. I also think stablecoins will be very interesting. I forget who brought this up. This might have been Jamie Dimon. Basically, stablecoins are, assuming they get approved or blessed or whatever the right vocabulary is, they're going to start becoming big buyers of U.S. Treasuries, because they're going to have a one-to-one relationship. So they could become the largest buyers of Treasuries if this goes the right direction. So it's pretty interesting to think about. So we'll go to Jeff. I think Jeff, you had your hand up first. I think that's how this goes. Or it's Jeffrey. Oh, we got Jeff first and Jeffrey second. Sorry, we got back to back. Sorry, Jeffrey. Jeff first.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Threw it in the chat, but you ever use a mobile notary for the closing process? I mean, I've done a couple of these, pretty comfortable with it. And I find myself, like the drive, it's like, do you really
Yeah.
need me? You know,
No,
like,
I've
can
done
we?
I've done mobile notary for the last 50 transactions because again, my market's Fresno and I live in Mountain View. I didn't there for a while. I would go to every closing, but no, I've done a mobile notary at least the last 50 transactions. You just have to put in an extra 24 hours in your timelines.
Right, to do it the day before. That's what I'm looking at for my next one. I've had a lot of fun learning the process and going over there, but now I'm like, it's the same stuff we just
It's the
did.
same thing. Exactly.
Do you
Yeah.
actually need my body there, or can we
Nope.
do this a different way?
Yeah, mobile notary, they're going to take your license. It's like 120, at least in California, it's 125 bucks extra
Sure.
cost,
Sure.
but well worth it. I mean, for me, that's a 5-hour drive I saved, so it's
Yeah,
absolutely worth it.
that's where I found myself. Okay, all right, cool. I'm not off in left field.
There you go.
On the multifamily thing, I think
Yep.
one time you mentioned you have this additional workload of kind of referee between the tenants, and
Mhm.
if possible to have done the whole thing single family, maybe that would have been a good route, but the market wasn't there. The numbers don't pencil. I had someone, ask me about multifamily, and I was like, I don't know. I don't look at it. It's not really in my buy box. And I think it's in the category of tempting, but put it on hold. Like, stay with my buy box, stay with my single family, stay with the place that I know.
Yep.
That might come later. And I talked to one guy who had a lot of houses, like maybe 80 plus, and it came up for him to move the needle, that it was a meaningful mathematical increment. Like going from 80 to 81 houses, not that meaningful, but going 80 to 90 and getting a 10-unit apartment was meaningful. So it's one of those shiny object things. I'm just looking for confirmation. Like, keep your buy box simple. That other stuff can come later when it's needed
Yeah.
for math, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of are giving the answer I was going to give. It is as long as your buy box is working and you're having success, which based on last week's conversation, you are. Don't get distracted. Right, work it until it doesn't work anymore. Right. Why did I go to multifamily? I had no desire. I had no thought, no inkling of going to multifamily until I realized that my single family market was overvalued, thanks to Bruce Norris, and then validation, homework, research, account, affordability index, all of that. I saw the crash coming. Now, I didn't see 75% drop. I'm not pretending like I did, but I saw 20 or 30% coming. And I'm like, time to get out of the way. And at the time, single families were overvalued and multifamilies were undervalued. So it made a very easy transition. I suspect that will happen again. I suspect there will be a time in my future, and I've talked about it, I think, for the last 18 months, and I'll be very open. When it happens in my market, I will gladly sell my 30, 40, 50 homes and move them all into apartments. It's just not that time, right? The multifamily market, especially Class B and Class C, are grossly overvalued, right? We haven't had a come to Jesus moment yet. It's coming. Right. I'm going to be talking to Ken McElroy, I think on the 9th, and that's going to be a big conversation we have, is about Class B and Class C because he's already active in Class A. So I look forward to that conversation. So it's coming, right? There's no reason to rush right now. The value's not there. Your buy box is working. Don't get distracted. Be aware, right, that there's this other thing there, but it will become an absolute no-brainer if I'm right about Class B and Class C.
Awesome, awesome. And if I may have one last thing on the zip codes,
Sure.
you really fine tuned the buy box by zip code. I was recently doing searches based on city name, and I was getting some hit and miss. Like, there's a bad part of town and a good part of town. And one town I'm looking at, it's actually 5 zip codes for that township. And I went to census.gov and I'm like, I don't live there. I don't know. What's the wrong side of the tracks, you know?
Yeah.
I've been looking at census.gov, and maybe this is helpful for everyone on the call, but I've been getting a little more precise with I've got a zip code that I'll look for, but not the city name. Because there's
Yeah.
a bad part of town and a good part of town, and I'm looking for the good B plus area.
Yeah, I think the reason I use zip code is, again, when I first got to Fresno, it was just too big for me, right? Because my whole goal of my buy box in the first 3 years was I wanted to produce an active listing of 20 to 40. So Fresno was just simply too big. So I went to a zip code. For some of you, you might have to do multiple zip codes. I think if your buy box is so small, you're only getting 5, 6, 7 listings, you got to expand it. And maybe city name makes sense because some towns are small. But yeah, that's why zip code works. Like in Fresno back in 2002, I would not touch 93706, for example. It was just a place, a part of town my property managers wouldn't want to go to. So guess what? I never looked there. So yeah, zip codes allow for more fine tuning, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay. I've had the same experience. I'm looking at 4 zip codes, about 20,000 population each, and it produces like, I think right now it's 21 active listings. Now, some of those are garbage because I've looked at them and they just weren't interesting,
Yep.
but it's manageable, you know?
Yep. That's the whole point. A good buy box is 20 to 40 active listings. Once you get in the routine, you could go through the list and identify it in minutes. What's new, what's changed, and that's the repetition we're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, man.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. All right, Jeffrey.
Hey, Michael.
Hi.
So I think this is a two-part question. The first part is maybe an introduction to the second part, and maybe would nullify the need for it potentially. Not that I still don't want to ask it, but the first part of this question, the first question is, I have about 17 doors here in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. So and we've done great in terms of appreciation and rental appreciation over the last 15 years, maybe almost 20.
Wow.
So our metro area seems to be like a really obvious Goldilocks zone for continuing to double, triple, quadruple down. Just go ahead and expand our portfolio in Jacksonville. We get calls and texts and little pieces, little postcards and mail all the time from all the other investors that want to be us, basically.
Yep. I know how that feels. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And recently, a couple things have occurred that have given me not only pause, but a great impetus to, at a minimum, want to diversify into a completely different state.
Okay.
And so that there are two main provocations. The first one is insurance increasing 2 or 3 times. And the second one, which seems to go in concert with that, is the weather. It seems like anybody who's paying attention would have to admit, no matter what they kind of quote unquote believe about future weather trends, that we are getting stronger and stronger storms and hits. And historically, we know that when there is one of the really, really strong storms in a summer or a hurricane season hitting a major metro area, we have tens of billions in damage, and it's almost a decade impact on the financial well-being of the insurance industry. And in Florida, we seem to have 3 different types of insurance. We've got scams, which is like you're paying for nothing, basically, because we know if anything actually happened, especially regionally, the insurance company would just evaporate. They would go bankrupt. You're going to be 10 years in litigation. The second is like the major insurers, which mostly have all left. And if they are anyone who's still here, they'll only insure brand new homes in the middle of the state, nothing coastal. They've made their view of Florida very clear. They don't want to be here, and they don't want to touch us.
Right.
And that's fairly recent that that's occurred. And then the third kind of insurance, which is the state insurance, which is basically a co-opt. And they've literally said, look, if anything bad happens in Florida, anyone who we're insuring, we're gonna just immediately give you a 20% increase in your rates instantly, and you have to pay it because it's basically it's a co-op. It's not really insurance. It's instant. And obviously that would happen with the rest of the industry later on down the road when they can raise the rates, but Citizens will just raise it immediately. So, those insurance changes, in concert with the apparent weather trends, tells me I wonder if we're going to be underwater in the next decade. And so I don't want to jump ship, but at a minimum, I feel the intense need to make it so our entire wealth is not just stuck in a specific region, and to start to barbell or diversify to something that doesn't have the same correlated risk factors. So I've asked Matt this question. I've asked Dion this question. I've gotten various answers, and I'm wondering what your perspective might be just on that first part.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to diversification. So California and Florida share a lot of similarities around insurance. First off, kind of the same deal, right? Little insurers that disappear, then the big insurers who are jacking up prices are leaving, and then of course we have, I think it's called Cal Insurance or whatever it's called here. Same kind of idea. It is an interesting thought exercise that I have had several times over the last decade, and I think I've shared that. We looked at diversifying Texas, Arizona, Colorado, but at least in my personal experience, because again, we don't have the same kind of weather trend that Jacksonville has. Big storms, that you could see every year is getting worse, and the fact that Fresno has some of the most stable dirt. Because in California, you're really worried about earthquakes. We chose to stay put because the hardest thing to do is build another team. That said, if I was in Florida, especially on the coast, and I had 90+% of my wealth on the coast, I would absolutely look to diversify. Does that mean get out of state? Not necessarily, right? You can go inland. But yeah, I wouldn't, just sitting here as over 50 on the other side of building wealth, I would not want a large percentage of my wealth on the coast. And that goes for Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, anywhere in the Gulf where, we see these hurricanes come up and just slam. I think it's wise to get some equity out. Then the question becomes, how do you do it? I think the answer is 1031 exchange. You don't want to pay the tax man. Then the next question is, okay, I again, where I sit, I would at least look inland first, right? Because you could probably get a lot of places in 2 hours. I don't know what's around Jacksonville. I don't think you have to default to out of state. I think a lot of people naturally would. But, I think there's historical evidence that if you go inland, off the coast, there might be some opportunities there. So those are my first thoughts. Diversification makes sense. Get off the coast. And then it becomes, how much? 50-50, 60-40, certainly 80-20, right? I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, that I appreciate that. That totally makes sense as well. I thought about just going inland because, I mean, really, we don't have like beachfront properties or anything like that. We're all, probably our closest to the coast is, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes from the ocean, let's say. So we're already got some distance there. We do have some properties that are within, a few blocks of a river, the major river in Jacksonville, which also can be a flood risk.
Sure.
We do have flood insurance in addition to our typical homeowners insurance. But the issue I saw with just saying, hey, let's just go inland so we don't have that coastal risk and stay in Florida,
Yeah.
which would be very easy to do. There's plenty of small towns within, like you said, 2 hours that we could move into that probably have a reasonable amount of opportunity. Is that it seemed that insurance wise, because the insurance issues seem to alter radically at the state line. If I own in Florida, I can't use, I don't know, State Farm or Geico or whatever, not because I'm on the coast, but because I live in the state of Florida, because they literally left Florida or they're leaving Florida. Like, no Florida. They're not looking at the nuance that you just brought up, right?
Sure.
And so the concern I have about staying in Florida at all is
Sure.
that it seems, especially based on what I mentioned on with the state insurance as well, which we have some of, if a hurricane hits Miami, and all these insurers that are in the state of Florida have massive losses from that, it seems like I pay for that in Jacksonville anyway. Because actually in Jacksonville, we're not just good in the ways I described, but we don't get hit by hurricanes. I mean, if we were in Georgia, I'd just probably leave it alone. But we're not. We're in Florida, and so we seem to share those slings and arrows. So is that a valid concern in terms of staying in state and in that wrinkle?
Well, I mean, it's certainly valid. Having had more experience or looking at insurance longer, typically what happens at the state level, and again, my experience is California, pretty similar, is it goes in waves. And what will happen is the insurance, because again, insurance companies are for-profit enterprises. They're going to realize that being inland X amount of miles or whatever it is actually a profitable trade. And, for example, all of my insurance went up in 2023. About half of them went down in 2024. Down, deflation. So again, I think when you make the right business decision, insurance companies will do the same thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if they came back. And again, I don't know what cities aren't on the coast, but I don't think I would extrapolate current trend as a future trend with insurance, right? They are for-profit enterprises, and they will realize there's extra margin, and they'll go get it. So again, everything went up in 23 and half went down in 24. Not a lot, but half of my stuff went down.
Fair enough. So what I'm gathering from what you said is that even if they reacted in the short term, over time, that might
Normalize.
balance out just because of the natural forces involved. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, normalize. Yep.
All right. So the follow-up then, now that we've
Sure.
covered that ground, is now that I'm hoisted with this question of, leaving at least my metro, if not the region. It seems like a lot of the conversations or a lot of the clarifications around choosing location is with the assumption that you're already in a particular area and you're just looking at various zips. How far out from the metro are you going to need to be? Things like that. And if I'm leaping completely out of my metro area, now I've got to make regional decisions, and there's different opinions around, and I've certainly gathered some of those as to what the macro basis should be to go, like, where in Georgia might I invest or wherever else. And of course, in your community, there's all sorts of ups and downs and opinions and success stories and challenges and whatnot. So it opens a can of worms, and it becomes an extremely not just research intensive process, but confusing process, because there doesn't seem to be as much of a step-by-step, like, well, here's step one in your research process, and here's how you might narrow it down, etc. So I'm looking for that.
Yeah. So
what is
how
my method for deciding on regions?
So how I break this down for folks, because again, I deal with a lot of California investors who are like, it doesn't make sense here. Where do I go? Right. And then they do the old Google search. What are the top 10 markets? This, that, the other. What I believe is the most powerful thing is, again, I kind of talked about it with, I think one of the first questions is, you need to be able to tap into an investing network that's already successful. That is priority number one, right? Don't go to, Boise, Idaho. I'm just picking it at random because you read some article that says Boise is the number one market. It doesn't matter, right? If you don't have the infrastructure, the team, the history, the experience, I've seen lots of people do bad deals in great markets. Second, the other thing I really think about is, do you have another market where you have a head start? You grew up there, your wife grew up there, you have family there, you went to school there. There's something that you have knowledge of. And what I mean by that is you already have a network there, a personal network, not an investing network like our school community, but a personal, like my uncle is there or my brother is there, or whatever. Why is that important? Because what I have seen is investors that get it right out of state have an infrastructure and people they can call on that they're not paying. Right. The last thing you want to do is go to a market where you're paying people and they're going to just either lie to you or they're going to sing you the most positive spin on any negative story. That's not helpful, right? Bad news doesn't get better with time. So I lean into, where'd you go to school? Where do you have family? All of that. If nothing is there, like you've been in the same market for your entire life, the next thing I go to is there a town or a city you want to visit? Right? Your family always wants to go to X or Y or Z. Because if that is true, then, oh, by the way, you get to travel there and write it off because it's a business expense in most cases. Talk to your accountant. But you have a reason to go there. I am not a particular fan. I told Millennial Mike this when he picked Gary, Indiana. I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You've put hundreds of thousands of dollars at risk. You've never even been there. Are you freaking kidding me? I don't like that. I think that is a disaster waiting to happen. Now, thankfully, he's been there several times since, and he's got a team now. But so that's what I think is, where do you have an unfair advantage? Where do you have history? Where do you want to go? That's kind of how I break it down. All the other stuff is just noise. It's just confusing. Other people's opinions, top 10 lists. It's not helpful. That's what I think.
So in terms of growth trends and anything other than just basic cash flow from day one, like you've always said, those things are not like you as a good economist, you still think not really helpful, not
Secondary.
something to seriously.
I don't think it's all second. Like again, I've seen plenty of investors lose a lot of money in great markets. I want to de-risk the situation. Where do I have an unfair advantage that I can capitalize on? Because again, Gary, Indiana is not a market that would be on any top 100 list. But if you can go into it and you have the infrastructure and the team and success and you've been there, I've seen a lot of people make great money in bad markets. In fact, I would argue it's probably easier to make great money in a bad market because nobody else is looking there. So you have an unfair advantage with less competition. If there's a market, again, I'll just pick on Boise, Idaho, because I think I said it earlier, that's on some top 10 list by Money Magazine. Everybody and their brother is going to be there. It's like that's the last market I would want to look at, right? I don't like dumb money chasing trends. So yeah, I'm a huge macro guy, but that's not where I start. I'll certainly look at it. Don't get me wrong, but it's absolutely a secondary concern.
Okay, that makes sense. Is part of the reason why we can be somewhat agnostic about that is because there's due to the economics of rental real estate, that there's always a bit of a trade-off between the appreciation and the cash flow and whatnot. And somehow, some way, you're probably going to get one of those better due to, like you said, various levels of competition and attractiveness.
Exactly. And the other thing that I always say and have a shirt that inflation's a feature, not a bug. It's built into the system, right? That's the beauty of the way we do mortgages here. 30-year fixed is it's like a cheat code, right? It's not, like Canada, they don't have that, right? They have 3 and 5 and 7 years. 30-year money is, it's a one-way bet because if rates come down, you can refi. If rates go up, doesn't matter. So yeah, it's an unfair advantage for sure.
Cool. Makes sense.
All right. Very cool. All right, Jeff Jones, you're back. Drive safe.
There it goes. Yes. So my question was really following on the insurance topic about what happens if you have a higher number of houses. I mean, if you got one house and you have a claim and the fire places burned down, okay, the bank has a problem, right? But
Mhm.
if you got like 100 houses and you're paying all of these insurance premium, I don't know. Is there a tipping point where maybe you go high deductible or you self-insure and say, if one of my houses burned down,
Mhm.
1 out of 100, I'll buy a new one. I don't know. How does this look at higher scale? Like if with the hazard
Yes.
insurance?
Yeah. So one of the things that will happen is at some point the insurance company will say we no longer want to take that risk. So that happened to Olivia and I. Um, I think it was at 15 houses. I think it's either 15 or 20. The number doesn't matter. But at some point the insurance company will refuse to take on additional risk, and you'll be forced to go somewhere else. Second, as you get bigger, you can go to what's called a commercial real estate or commercial insurance. It's like it's just a bigger process with bigger numbers, and you have a lot more deductible. A standard residential policy at Farmers or whatnot might be 1,000 or 2,500, maybe $5,000 if you're lucky. A commercial policy, you can do 20 grand, 50 grand. You really have a lot more deductible flexibility. It's like self-insurance. A $50,000 deductible really shields the insurance company from a lot of risk. It's only the catastrophe that, a full burn that happens. So you do have that choice. And I know a bunch of big investors, some of the big guys have been doing it 50 years, actually do self-insurance, X liability. So they still have liability insurance, but they do self-insure for fire and whatnot. It's not something I've chosen to do. I had two fires in the last 9 months, right? One complete loss and one kitchen fire. Uh, so I will always have fire insurance. But I know there's some guys that self-insure for catastrophes. Not something I choose to do, but I do have a high deductible, much higher than most of you, I would suspect.
I'm okay with the high deductible personally. And the highest they'll let me take it is 5% with the mortgage lender. That was their condition. They're like, you can go to 5, nothing higher. And I'm
Nothing
like,
higher.
okay, that
We'll go to
works.
5.
Whatever you guys
Yeah,
say. I'm on your books.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
okay,
Some
that's
of the
helpful.
cool, very cool.
As I was thinking about, I was like, I ran this number by my son actually for the math. I was like, if it's let's say $1,000 a year and the house is 200,000 or rough math,
Yep.
and you're in for 10 houses, it's 10,000 each year on premium.
Yeah.
It's kind of noticeable.
Oh, yeah,
And
for sure.
and my son was doing the math, and he was like, "Yeah, if you have more houses, it gets even worse." He was like, "At 100 houses, you'd be paying, 100,000 per year. You just need to burn one house every 2 years, and you're break even." I was
Yeah,
like, "That's correct. Those are the fractions."
yeah.
And he was like, "He's like, how
Congratulations.
likely is it the house is going to burn every 2 years? Whatever." I was like, "Okay, young man, we'll ask some questions. I have no idea."
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just and again, when you get to that scale, you're gonna spread the risk. You're still gonna pay for liability insurance, but
Right,
yeah,
right.
you could self-insure for that. I know plenty of people that do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure, of course. All right, no, I don't see any other hands up. But again, you can put them up. I'm gonna go to the comment section and see if there's. Oh, we do have one. Jim, you want to jump in?
Um, have you been able to collect from tenant damage? What was the process?
So it's a hassle. So based on well, first off, tenant damage comes right off their deposit. But what if it's more than their deposit? We have occasionally gone to small claims court. It's a big hassle, big expense, but sometimes tenants piss me off, and and it's just a fu problem because anytime I've done that, I've lost money. Let me be very clear. I pay a lawyer, I pay an attorney. Oh, by the way, I get a judgment. Then I have to turn the judgment over to a credit collection agency, and I only get. It's not something I do regularly, but if I think there's somebody out there trying to game the system, I do it as a point of principle. But I would tell most people it's a losing battle.
Yeah, it's just a waste of time. It's easier just to fix it and let it go.
Yeah, and yeah, that happens most of the time. But I can remember 3 or 4 times going to small claims court just because I was like, sometimes you got to stand on principle, and I've got more money than you do, so.
Well, and sometimes you're also helping out future landlords as well against that tenant.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. Yeah, and I actually collected on one. God, it shocked me the hell. I got like a $5,000 check in the mail from a credit collection agency, because I guess they inherited some money and the judgment was there, and I got a check. So I mean, it did pay off in one instance. That's the only one I can remember.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, Trade Better. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, good morning. I just had a quick question. It's kind of following with Jeff. I was I'm looking at a smaller market for my next place, and I guess I'm wondering about population potentially with lower birth rates and everything. Is that something, and especially since I'm planning for the next 30 years, lower birth rates and everything, is there anything that you've thought about with this, or not at all?
No, I wouldn't worry about it at all. One of the things is as long as the United States is still the shining beacon on the hill, which one can argue that may not be the case momentarily, but
Right.
we won't go there. We're going to get a lot more migration. I would be more concerned about birth rates in Europe than I would about the United States. When you step back and look at population growth over time, the fact that we are short entry-level housing, it's not a concern I would waste 1 second thinking about.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep, you got it. All right, no other hands up. We'll go to a question from James. Ooh, I like this one. What's the best way to include utilities on a duplex with one electric meter and one water meter? I have had this hassle endless amounts of time. Again, you could try based on square foot. You could try based on number of people on the lease. You can try lots of things. All of those lead to fights and collection issues and frustration. The number one way to get around this issue is rent that to one large family and put them on one lease. I bought probably 10 or 15 what today we would call house at ADUs. At the time they were built, they were all in 1 meter. And the only thing I could do is I had to, out of frustration, end up renting them all to one family, multi-generational family. That's the way around it. Otherwise, you're just fighting every month. Oh, the tenant so-and-so keeps their AC on and the door open. So-and-so does this, so-and-so does that. Again, part of being a landlord is tenant management. And the best way to do it is to take that duplex, maybe it's a 2-1 and a 1-1, and rent it to a mom and daughter, grandma and a daughter, two family, brother, sister. That's the way to get around it, is to rent it to one family. That's the only way I've got around it easily. You can in some cities get a meter put in, but it's pretty expensive. But my answer is one family, James. I don't see James on the screen, but hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's keep going. Familiar process. Okay, I think we got those questions. Okay. Yep, I think Jeff shared that. Yep, $12,000 fines. All right, I don't see any other questions in the comments. If I missed it, Rashid, go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm connecting with you first time. I've been exchanging messages on school with you.
Awesome.
I have joined your group almost a month back. It's a lot of value, a lot of good people. I'm in Pittsburgh area. One thing I have shared with the colleagues here is that I've been investing in the new construction properties, which has worked very well for me, but I have not found anyone else doing that. So first question, is this something I'm doing right or something new? What is your opinion around it?
I think if you can make the numbers work, like if I had to do it all over again, that is, I would do by new construction. It may not be brand new, but it would be less than 5 years old for sure. I think if you can find a city and make the numbers work, it's a genius idea, right? You're really delaying capital expenses. You probably get a warranty if it's truly brand new for the first year. I think there are no wrong strategies. And if you can make those numbers work, that's great. We do have people doing infill build for rent, which is essentially the same thing, right? They're using a new construction. It's actually something I'm looking at in Vegas, right? The Vegas market is pretty soft right now. So I'm actually looking for builders who might give me a discount if I go buy 2, for example. So I'm actually actively looking at new construction. I do have an advantage because I could do a 1031 exchange out of older homes. One of the things I want to do is make the average age of my portfolio newer. So no, you're not doing anything wrong. I think most people, if they had their druthers, would rather buy new construction. It's just that it doesn't work in a lot of markets. So I would tell you to keep going. If it's working for you, don't stop.
Numbers are working for me. I get good tenants, and of course, I don't have those problems of maintenance and anything.
Yeah.
My focus is all on growth. This takes to my second question. I'm struggling because real estate is capital intensive market. Now with the 7 to 8% interest rate, it's very difficult to make the numbers sometime work. It's very hard unless I start putting 30 or 40% down. After that,
Yep.
it does work.
Of course.
What are you using? Is there any creative way or magic wand you have which I'm not using?
Oh, I mean, in the beginning, when you're in growth mode, it's just about the basic numbers. But once you get into the game for a while, call it 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to have equity plays that you could do, right? You can go take the first one, extract equity, which is what I did. But yeah, in the beginning, the first 5 years suck. It's slow. It takes a while to get the income snowball going. It takes a while to get the equity snowball going. But it's all math. It will all come to you. It's just that sometimes we're not patient enough to let time, help us, right? Inflation's a feature, not a bug. So I would tell you, don't rush the process. Keep going. I would negotiate hard with builders because again, I don't know your market, but I know the market in Vegas is really slow. So I'm beating them up, and I don't expect them to say yes to my first offer, but I'm pretty convinced I'll find a builder who just wants to get rid of a couple of units to make their numbers look better or whatnot. And, don't pay list price for anything, even a new build, right? The house that I'm sitting in, we got for 150,000 less than asking, no lot fee, no upgrade fee. We got 10 grand in closing cost credit, and we got 30-year money at 499. So I beat the hell out of it.
I think, Michael, I was talking yesterday in one of the calls. I'm seeing a very different behavior now from the builders. They are calling me. They can put appliances in, closing cost in. But I was worried. I heard your one of the article. I think you were talking about markets are going down. Is it right time to buy, or we should wait for another 6 months, like what happens, and then we get it back?
I don't know anything about your market. I would tell you in general, it's a buyer's market everywhere, and it's time to be aggressive. But write amazing deals that make sense. Don't pay list price for anything. Go get every pound of flesh you can. Make sure it works.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Hey, Charles, how you doing?
Great, Michael. We did something yesterday to the kids.
Okay.
We binder strategy the kids.
Dion would be proud.
So basically what we've got is 4 properties that 3 of them are somewhat close, and I need the kids to step up.
Okay.
And we've got a lot of questions on here about where to start and what to buy.
Sure.
And we're rural. We're looking to put things together. So we've got some videos that we'll be launching, especially bothering Mark here because he's been doing a lot of work lately.
Nice.
So I'm going to try to put things together for like what to look for, what not to look for, and some of the very basics on stuff. The amount of information that we've been able to gather over the last 4 or 5 months from your community has been awesome. A lot of the stuff you kind of know is true to begin with, but it's nice to be able to articulate and duplicate.
I appreciate. We're almost 400 people in this community, and there's just something about being around 400 people that are going in the same direction that is powerful. And it's pretty cool. Sorry, go ahead.
What would you say that we need to show in the process as I know there's a roof, there's some kitchens, there's some foundations that they got to be pushed back in on one wall. What do people need to see? What would you show about this process, about the rents and the whole? We've got an opportunity to start because we already own the properties, to start showing the advancement. And I mean, everything right now is positioned for a flip, but I want to do rentals.
Yeah. Well, I think you one of the things. I mean, if you go back and look at my very early channels, back when I was flipping 50 plus homes from 18 to, I think I stopped in 21. Um, I did a lot of walkthrough videos, and I would go check those out. And again, they were nothing fancy, nothing edited. We basically walked through a house. We pointed out the issues. We talked about estimates, and we had sometimes I had my contractors with me, like Carlos did a bunch of walkthroughs for me, and then we showed the after. We tied those videos together. We talked about real numbers. We talked about risks. Um, we showed stuff like sometimes in these old houses you have no idea what's behind the wall until you take down the wall, and they're like, oh look, guess we got to replace that wiring. Knob and tube and all that stuff. um Sometimes the knob and tube was just left there. It was already rewired, but it was left there. That's still a problem. We got to get rid of that. So just show all of it. I mean, it really is. Guys, look at this crazy crack in the foundation. Is this a real issue or not? How do you look at that? Well, just show it all. I wouldn't. There's no right answer, and you'll be amazed at how many people just love looking at the process. Like what I always did is I named my houses because I never said the street name. I would just call them like, this is the bubblegum house, and this is the roach house, and this is the rainbow house. I mean, just make up names and just say this is update number 2 for you know bubblegum house, and this is update number 3, and so people can just follow those. So have fun with it. I mean, there's a lot you could do with doing a education like that.
May I make a suggestion?
Of course.
Have somebody or a program dig back through your old videos and patch some of that stuff together in small pieces. Because a lot of this community is asking how to start, where to start, what to look for.
I will ask my team to do that. Yeah.
The visualization, being able to see start and after.
Yeah. Let me just take one quick look, not to cut you off, but I think I had a playlist called walkthroughs. Let me just take a look. Where are my playlists? But yeah, I think I have a playlist, so this would be really relatively easy for my team to go get. I have so many of these. Let me check. I'm checking. Yeah, property walkthroughs and recent projects. Yeah, there's 214 videos in there. Yeah. Okay. Got it. 214 videos to look at. I will get that email done today.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Of course. Good idea.
Nice seeing everybody here.
All right. Jason, your hand's up.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I forgot how to unmute. It's basically a lease question. So
Sure.
I'm doing a binder right now, which I did with one tenant. I'm waiting for her price she's going to give me. The problem is their lease isn't up until August. So do I just give them the rent increase now, the notice, and then do a new lease as soon as theirs expires?
So I don't know I think every state or city is different, but again, you can negotiate. It would just go into effect in August. Right. So you could do a new lease effective date.
So I can have them sign the new lease, but the date doesn't occur till then.
Yeah, the effective date will be, 8/1 or 8/31 or whatever the right date is.
Okay, yeah, I have to give them 90 days. So that's perfect. That was it. It was a simple one.
All right. Very cool.
Thank
I like
you.
the fact that you're walking. Go get your steps.
That's what I'm doing every day since we were in Vegas, because I did a lot of walking there and it made me feel good. And I've been doing at least 10,000 ever since. So
Nice.
Thank you.
Very impressive. I like it. Very cool. All right, Jeffrey.
Hey, Michael. So it's been so long since we've talked, and I've gone so much further in my journey now. So I figured better ask another question.
Please.
So now I've founded some trusted boots on the ground. I found a region, and I'm interested in it. I don't have any experience in areas that have lots of really tiny towns. I mean, in my city, we got the greater Jacksonville area. We got almost 1 million people, maybe more. Not hard to find renters. there's a lot of data and there's a lot of people and it seems really obvious what's going on.
Sure.
In the area I'm looking at is actually anywhere between 45 minutes and 2.5 hours outside Atlanta.
Okay.
So Atlanta obviously is a big metro area, and I can simply say, hey, I just want to get close to that area, and then I've got all of the massive demographics that's going to radiate out the pathway of progress, all that good
Sure.
stuff.
Sure.
But I also have trusted boots on the ground and interest in some of these smaller areas, and we're talking about counties or metros that are 100,000, 300,000, or even more like 5 or 10,000.
Yeah.
And
anything over 50,000, not really a concern of mine. I do get nervous sub 10,000. I mean, that's usually one employment towns. But if you're in Atlanta, as long as you're 45 minutes from Atlanta or other major, it doesn't matter. It's a bedroom community, especially in today's world with work from home for a lot of people. I wouldn't, back in 2001 when I was trying to find the market outside of the Silicon Valley, I didn't want anything less than 50,000 people. And that's why I had to go all the way to Fresno. I don't know that I'd be as concerned about it today with work from home and all of that. Dion told us about how he found his house on the water. He just went an extra 30 minutes because of work from home. So as long as you're 45 minutes to, a major, not a concern of mine.
And when you say major, I mean, again, there's a big difference between Atlanta and one of those smaller counties or towns that's in the 1 or 200,000. So if I'm 30 minutes from a town that's got 150 to 300,000, is that still generally
plenty big enough? Plenty big enough. Yeah, there's plenty of jobs there.
And there's no well, actually, speaking of jobs, I'm glad you mentioned that. That triggers me to have a follow-up that stems from that. Dion's famous 3 major economic drivers. One of the towns that I'm looking at, they have 100,000 population, so it seems like decent.
Yeah, sure.
But it's basically the only reason it exists seems to be like there's an air base that employs 100,000 people, and the next employer down is like Frito-Lay at 500 people packing chips into bags or something. So that's not exactly 3 major economic drivers, it seems. So am I wanting to steer clear of that just because of that single employer type of situation?
So that's where you have to really evaluate and get to know the area, because there are some bases that they're never going to go away. But I remember San Diego. I think it was in the late 80s, got just hammered when they closed 3 Navy bases, I think they were down there. And San Diego is a big part of town. But yeah, if you kind of remove, I don't know, 50,000 people in very short order, that's going to have an impact. Now, obviously it came back, but a town that's so single employer driven would be a big risk. But again, this is Atlanta, right? So does that town have, in 45 minutes, are there other big employers? So they would probably figure it out. But again, you know the area, I don't.
Yeah, those nuances are probably important, like you said. I mean, there's a big interstate, I-75, and it goes through Atlanta. And so if you start in Atlanta, you go south, we're looking at 5 different metros all the way to about 2 hours south of Atlanta, right? And various sizes. The one that's got the air base that is still looks attractive, other than what I just mentioned, is the one that's the furthest south. So they're about a 2-hour drive from Atlanta. It doesn't mean they're a 2-hour drive from the nearest reasonably sized metro.
Right.
So who knows? But yes, in terms of the big Leviathan, no, they're not quite as close.
Yeah. So what I would do in that case is because whatever the towns are, I'll just call them A, B, C, D, E, right? E is where the base is. I would want to know more about D. Like, where's the employment in D, right? Because if we lose the air base, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to go to D. They're not going to go to Atlanta, at least most of them. They're going to go to D and maybe C. So I'd want to know if there's some buffer in those other two towns, or if it's like, dude, we couldn't handle 50,000 people looking for work, then that's a big risk.
Fair enough. Makes sense.
Cool. All right. Very, very cool. What else do we got in here? Yeah. Best ideas come from walking. Yeah. Steve Jobs at walking meetings. Yes. Yes, he did. All right. I don't see any other questions. Anybody else have questions? You can put it in the comments. If I missed it, I apologize. Mark, what's going on, man? Anything going on in your world?
No, just trying to keep everyone occupied in the chat, you know.
I appreciate you for doing that.
No?
Can you guys believe that Mark goes through all the comments and pulls them out for that session? We owe him a lot for that. Thank you for doing that.
No, I love it. I love it.
Very, very cool. All right, we'll wait another minute or so. Otherwise, we'll just end this a little bit over an hour.
What about if nobody has questions, is there any updates on the Vegas event? Like what's coming up soon or anything?
I'm going to wait till August 1st. I have a couple of headliners I'm tracking down. One of them's committed, but I've done this before, so I'll wait till August 1st. And then
Did anyone mention to you yet that Saturday is Valentine's Day?
Of course they have.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's all, yeah. Well, there's no better place to be for Valentine's Day than Vegas. So, hey, come bring your loved one, make it a 3-day weekend, have some fun. But yeah, I'm aware, unfortunately. My wife's giving me hell for that, just so you know. Oh, you could pass out roses oh, dude, Jen, please remind me of that. I might actually do that. See, Jen likes to spend my money. We love Jen for that. All right. We got a question. Oh, look at Hyder. What's going on, Ryan?
Hello, everyone. So I've been
back.
watching Brent Johnson and Dr. Richard Werner, and they've been talking about interbank connectivity throughout the world's banks. And not to say that it's a huge factor, but banks' balance sheets are connected. So I was wondering, what kind of concern do you put on that as far as U.S. housing goes in the banking process?
I think we talked about it today on the Daily Financial News. There is a burgeoning banking crisis 2.0 coming. You got Jamie Dimon talking about the regulators going to overreact again. You've got $500 million in unrealized losses. You have hedge funds or private equity who are big in the GFC getting active again. So yes, there is a real problem. I think what happens most likely is we just have bank consolidation, and frankly, JP Morgan and the big guys get bigger. What is its impact on housing? I think residential, again, I don't think the pain's in residential. Even the guys talking about GFC, Steve Diggle, who made $3 billion with Artist Fund in GFC, he's like, stop looking at mortgages. It's not a mortgage problem. It's private equity and private credit. And, that's where the pain's going to come. Another way is going to be commercial because, again, Class B and Class C are not trading, and there's tons of losses there. So I don't think it's going to come to residential. You're going to get bank consolidation. You're probably going to get some banks getting a little tighter, but don't worry, Fannie and Freddie will jump back in and be the buyer of last resort. So I think long-term, you're going to get banks being more restrictive, meaning less lending. They're going to say no more often. And we're going to have more bank consolidation. That's how I think this all gets done. Because again, the regulators are going to come in and do everything they can to make sure the system doesn't burn down. And likely that means JP Morgan gets bigger, Citigroup gets bigger, and we end up like Canada. I think Canada's got like 7 banks or 10 banks or whatever it is. So I think that's the outcome, Ryan.
That's about how I saw it too. I think we're the biggest domino, so the last to fall.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And they will do everything they can to jump in front of that because they remember how bad the GFC is. They're like, that's not happening again. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Jim.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Of course.
Going on to that same thing, do you see DSCR having issues?
Yeah, DSCR is going to be really interesting to look at because I actually think a lot of, because again, let's tie these two things together. When I said private credit, you could think DSCR. Those are connected. So yeah, I think there's a lot of DSCR pain coming. I've talked to some DSCR lenders off the record. They don't want to be on the record. That some of their early portfolios, which were very Airbnb heavy, are underperforming, to say the least. So yeah, what will happen there is they're going to take their losses and they will lend less. And then the other thing that happens, especially if Fannie and Freddie go public, like the president's talking about, I think you're going to see DSCR rates go up, not down. So I think there's actually a pretty good chance that conventional and DSCR loans are higher come January 1st than lower. I think most people think they're going to be lower. I think that's a risky bet. That makes sense, Jim?
Yeah, it makes sense. It just puts more thought in my head. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Trade better. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, Jim brought up a good point. Now I'm thinking about it. What would it be better going for hard money loans for smaller properties? I'm looking at a property that's sub 100. So
no, DSCR loans are the way to go. DSCR loans will always be better than hard money. Always. Yeah, I mean,
okay,
like
great,
for
thanks.
DSCR rates today are 7. Hard money's probably 9, and more points. There's a lot of costs in hard money. I don't think DSCR, like, let's just say this thing gets really bad. I don't think DSCR loans go much above 8. Because it's just they're not going to 10. Yeah.
All right, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, I think your hand's up again.
Yeah, so if a Fannie and Freddie, and that's a big if, happens, year, 2 years, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I think if it happens before. Again, I think the president has laid out kind of how the dominoes will fall. So I suspect that Fannie and Freddie will be public, spun out Q4, Q1, Q4 25, Q1 26. That's my window.
That quickly? Wow.
Oh yeah, I think they want to do it. I think they see that as a way to monetize the balance sheet. I think if they spun it out, they're going to own a lot. They're going to raise billions of dollars, and it's just one example of monetizing the balance sheet. Is what I think they're trying to play with.
Wow, that's going to be an interesting change, that's for sure.
It certainly will. Yeah, certainly will. Ryan, your hand's still up. I don't know if that's the second question. We just forgot to put it down. I'm going to guess we forgot to put it down. All right. Let me see if any other questions came through. All right. Very, very cool. So I have one action item from this. I'm going to send a note to my team to see if they can't cobble together some walkthrough videos. Thank you for that idea. And I want you guys to have a great day. I, again, apologize that both Dion and Matt had things come up outside of their control, but we will try to make it due next Sunday from 8 to 10. And I have already put the link in the calendar. So it is already there for next Sunday. I apologize for skipping or not doing that sooner. So we'll talk to you guys next week. Have fun. Take care. Be well.
Thanks, Uber.
Later.